Well, here's what I'll tell you is, the number one reason people don't niche down is fear, right? Fear that you're going to be turning someone away.
I don't know what time you're listening or where you're listening from. It's your boy, your host, NaRon Tillman, and you are with me for another episode of Walk in Victory. Speaking of victory walks, um, I'm gonna make a statement, and we're gonna clarify the statement through conversation. If you're trying to become wealthy from competition instead of creativity, it won't work. Competition, you look at somebody else and you try to beat them to the mark. You and you're not really building from your internal self. Our book is coming out, Awakening I Am, and we talk about this because it's your blueprint, the thing that you bring to the world. A coach can help you align it, but it's still your blueprint. You can't be your coach. You can't be someone else. And creativity comes from confidence. Creativity comes from mindset. Creativity comes from art. And that's the side of the brain that sometimes goes undeveloped because in our society, we don't lean no more towards artists. Before we used to lean towards the artists, the culture, people who were creative, and we look to them to solve problems and everything like that. And we had curriculums in schools that that fostered or enforced creativity. Now, no music, nothing that works on that side of the brain, nothing that helps to promote creativity. If it's almost like you're an alien if you become creative. But creativity is not just for music or just for art, it's also for business. Because the persons that are creating innovative technology are doing it from that side of the brain. They're doing it from seeing a problem, diving into the problem, and creating a solution. So we're going to talk about creativity. We're going to talk about business. We're going to talk about all things and why it's important, even in 2025, that you are putting your children. Listen, I'll be 50 in September. Right now, I make sure that my children play the piano. I make sure that they are involved in sports. I make sure that they're working on that side of their brain. My daughter's in Howard University for music sound therapy. You know, she's the musician of the house now. I used to be, but she's way more advanced than I am. And John, how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. Excited to have a good conversation about creativity and
Why do you
innovation.
think that we've lost in this day and age where we should be like continuing a monicum of innovation and creativity? Why do you think that we've lost that?
I think it really has to do with, um, honestly,
Mm,
what you deem important. And I think that people get stuck into the status quo of this is what I do. And I might be doing well at it. I might not be doing well at it. Um, but they get stuck into the status quo. And I'm a big believer in, I have a saying that if it's a goal, then you have to
mm,
put budget against it. And so it's not just about being creative, it's about making that creative live. And so you have to actually put money against it. Like people come to me and they say they want to grow faster. I'm like, great. Well, how much do you put into sales and marketing? It's like, oh, it's all word of mouth. Like, well, then you don't want to
yeah,
grow if you're not putting any money into sales and marketing. And then people come to me and say, hey, I really want to be innovative. I was like, cool. How much money do you spend on innovation? Oh, we don't do anything. I was like, well, then you don't really want to be innovative. And so, you know, uh, if you want to be creative, if you want to be innovative, I think it's two elements. The first element is you have an idea that's going to separate you, from everyone else, so that you're not just a me too, as you were talking about, like all your other competitors. You're going to feel and look and sound different. And then the next one is, well, I'm going to budget to be creative and to be innovative and to come up with new ideas. And so I couldn't agree more. Creativity is a massive component of business, and if you're not investing in that creativity, then you're gonna,
When I was
struggle.
younger, I went to Drake Business School, right? And I thought that I was going to learn how to be innovative or creative. I had my own business, and I wasn't a good business person. Practice. So having a
Yeah.
business doesn't make you a good business person. Just you have a incorporation or LLC doesn't mean that you know what you do. But when I went to the school, they taught me how to type, they taught me how to do the things.
Yeah.
They didn't teach me business. How do you think that this economy, this world can move forward if we don't have people who are teaching people how to do business? Some of it is innate, but some people just need to be trained. They may have good products, they may have good ideas, but they don't know how to do business.
You know, you talked about how, you have your kids in music and you have your kids in sports, and that your daughter has surpassed you in
Mhm.
terms of her musical ability, right? Uh, and I'm guessing she did a
Yes.
massive amount of
Right,
training
yeah, she did.
in order to surpass you. And um,
Mm.
business is no different. First of all, when you think of business, you have so many different components of business. When you go to business school, a lot of it is like finance related classes or accounting, or, you know what I mean? Like, it's very specific, but, you know, there's sales and marketing. There's, how do you make your product or service better? How do you build
Mm.
operational efficiencies within your company so that things run smoothly? And so, um, I I really believe that if you want to be great at business, you have to put in just as many hours as your daughter has put into music. Um, and, same thing with sports, and, I mentioned to you before, soccer is my passion. I spent a lot of time coaching my daughters in soccer. And here's the thing. In order to be great at any sport or any musical instrument or in business, there is a massive amount of really boring stuff that you got to learn how to do, and you got to learn how to do them great. The amount of time I have, my daughter's like juggling, or dribbling through cones back and forth with different patterns, it's boring, and I got to figure out, because they're young, how to mix it up and make it fun. But that's the thing that you got to do to make it great. And, same thing, like, I believe in, so the answer is, I believe there are mentors who can teach you and train you, you know, but I believe in this thing called theme-based reading. And theme-based reading is, you know what, I'm going to read 6 books on sales, and
Oh,
then I'm going to read 6 books on marketing, and then I'm going to read 6 books on operations. And so by having this theme-based approach, you can become a master at business in
I
multiple
want to
areas.
piggyback on that, and I love the fact that you're giving our audience something to bite on. What happens with the
Yeah.
mindset when we focus in on one system and then we move to another system? Whereas now sometimes we may be pushed to go hit sales, then marketing, and all over the place. But when we have this focused intent and the focused intent, focused results, what happens to the brain? What's going on with us?
So you bring up a good point. So, like, one of the things I talk about in business is the importance of focus. And I start off with, don't
Mm.
try to sell to everybody. Try to sell to a very narrow group, and then try to have a service offering for that group. But before you even do that, you need to have a vision. And that vision is what you're trying to achieve for those customers. So I'll just give you a quick example. I own a finance management and strategic planning company, which means I take over the finance department and I help with executive coaching and strategic planning, but only for service-based companies, and typically between 10 million and 100 million in revenue. And the goal is I created this acronym called the CPR score. And the CPR score stands for how much cash you have relative to your monthly overhead, your profit margin, and your year-over-year revenue growth. So CPR is a play on health, and then it's an acronym for cash, profit margin, and revenue growth. And my only goal, every single thing I put my time and energy into, all my creativity, all my innovation is around improving the CPR score for service-based companies. So if a retailer calls me, a manufacturer calls me, the answer is I can't help them. Maybe I know somebody can help them, but I'm not going to try to solve their problem. So by narrowing it down, now, I can come up with all creative ideas. I'm about to come out with an AI CFO in about a month. And I built a budgeting and forecasting software tool. And I've written an ebook to help people understand all the things you need to do. And so, I believe that greatness starts by being great for one group of people, not great for everybody. So I think that focus is a
I'm
really
glad that you
important thing.
brought that up, and this is the first time that in the history of my 400 and plus episodes that someone is really talking about being specific, but being specific in a certain way, right? Because what happens is, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, when you go to
Yeah.
bed, because you're creating for that one thing,
Yeah.
you continue to create, you continue to create, you continue to create. And that helps, does that help you get better and better and better and faster and stronger? Like Superman?
In my opinion, it absolutely does. And I also think, you know, the more you learn something, the more you realize
Whoa.
how little you know, right? Like I think there's like I think there's a cool graph somewhere where it shows like how much knowledge someone thinks they have, and as they study something more, they realize they know less than they think they did. And so, um, you don't
Whoa.
want to boil the ocean. You want to boil a small pot. And so, um, and then you can, as you get bigger, you can get a
Let's
bigger pot, and you can keep on growing in that regard. But, that's my big thing is, you know, let's narrow it down. Let's be great at something and then move on
even
to the next
down
thing.
to the dollar amount. Like I've listened very closely to what you said. Like it's not just a certain type of person or certain type of business. Is a certain type of business that's moving this amount of money uh, in revenue. Oh, how did you come up with that? Like, geniuses aren't born overnight, but it was. Tell us about your experience. How did you come up with this
Yeah.
this type of niche down approach?
Okay. So, previous to this company, I founded a digital marketing agency and I grew it from just me to about 250 people. And so I did fairly well with this company. Um, but I was a generalist
Mm,
agency. And
bro.
what that meant was I had clients in B2B, B2C, e-commerce, lead gen, branding, and I recognized a problem. We spent a lot of money on innovation, but the innovation was not very impactful because, if I was innovating for one group, I wasn't innovating for another group. And I'll just give you an example. Um, there's something in digital marketing called marketplaces. So like you can actually advertise on Amazon, on Walmart, on Target, on Instacart. And I had a bunch of e-commerce companies that wanted to advertise on those sites. And that was about 20% of my clients. And it took me about 6 months worth of development time to build the integrations with all of those different platforms in my technology. So for 6 months, after I went live, only 20% of my
Um,
customers benefited from that because the 80% the other customers could care less about being on Amazon. Like they're a B2B company. They don't need to sell on Amazon. And so, and then I would do 6 months of time building out my B2B connections. And so one of the things you really want to think about is like, how impactful is your creativity and your innovation? And if you are having a really homogenous group where you build something and it is only for that group, everyone benefits. And so that's one of the huge benefits of niching down is the impact will be greater and greater for, everyone
It's
involved.
funny, and I'm glad that you were vulnerable and shared that story because on the surface, someone would say, "Oh, you had 250 employees. You were able to understand the market." Generally, building a digital marketing agency is not that easy at all. But you were honest with yourself, and you said, "I'm underserving because I'm not niched down." How how was that worldview and that transition for you? Did you have to fight with yourself and wrestle with yourself to say I have to be niched down? Because the problem with niching down, not the problem. Caveat with niching down, you may have customers that you have to turn away. And when someone is in the business, it's hard to turn
Yep.
away some customers.
Yeah. Well, here's what I'll tell you is, the number one reason people don't niche down is fear, right? Fear that you're going to be turning someone away. I'm 5 years into this new company. I only work with service-based companies. It's very clear on my website. My phone rings all the time, but they're only
Mhm.
service-based companies. So it's that fear that, your phone's not going to ring, but your phone actually ends up ringing more because you have such better focus on your sales and marketing and that you have a better value proposition. And then your win rate is higher. When I'm if I'm sitting there and talking to a marketing agency and they got troubles with their finances and they need help, or they were growing fast and all of a sudden they plateaued and they don't know how to grow anymore. And I'm in a pitch and I get to tell them I owned a marketing agency. I grew it from 0 to almost 40 million. I currently only work with service-based companies and 95% of them are either marketing agencies or tech service firms. My
Mhm.
credibility is so high that they're like, you know what, you're the guy I want to work with. Where someone calls me up and they're in manufacturing and I know nothing about inventory. I don't know how much inventory someone should hold. I'm sure I can learn it. I have no experience in manufacturing. Like I just don't have the right to win in that space right now. And so by niching down, you can get the right to win
Well, that should be the
very
name of your
quickly.
book, The Right to Win.
Yeah, I like it.
Niche down. Let's give you the. So now you're going on podcasts and you're spreading this message. Why are you doing this? Like you can be selfish, but you're being altruistic and you're showing people that even though you only serve a certain population, but the knowledge that you're sharing can be fruitful in any industry.
Yeah. Look, I
Mm-mm.
really just enjoy helping people. Um, when I sold Rise, my digital agency, and I thought about what to do next, I had a business coach. And every 3 months we would do my quarterly planning together. And every 3 months, he's like, the insights you have are like nothing I've ever seen. You could create a company just helping people with those insights. And I thought that would be fun to do. I thought if I could help other companies uh, grow and be as successful as my last company or more successful, like that's an amazing feeling. And so I like coming onto podcasts and sharing, guidance where if I can help people improve their decision making and help them grow an amazing business, I feel really good about that. I feel like I'm doing my part to
Selling the
society.
company. You built the company from 0 to 40 plus. And how
Yeah.
how is that detachment? Talk to me about the mindset, the process when you was really releasing your baby, because it's almost like sending your kid to college or something.
Yeah. Look, I decided in October of 2019 I was going to sell. And then on April 1st of 2020 is when I stepped down and I was no longer a
Mm.
CEO and involved in the company. The amount of anxiety I had between October and April was through the roof. It was a very stressful, unpleasant time. And I worried about so many things. And then when I left, um, all I really cared about was that the buyer got a good deal. I really liked the people who bought the company. They're good people. And, I just wanted them to do well. They impacted my life in a major way through the sale. And so I wanted to make sure that they got their money's worth and that it turned out to be a good investment. I'm cheering for them. I'm their biggest cheerleader. But I honestly, I love what I do today. And as you said, it's like someone gone to college. It's a little bit different because you're going to have a lifelong relationship. I don't have
Hmm.
a lifelong relationship with my old company, but I do have a lifelong relationship with my leadership team. Just this last weekend, I have texted every single member of my leadership team except for one person in the last 2 days. And I talked to that person a week ago, so like we're still very, very close, all of us.
Why so? For somebody who maybe like when is a good time to you said you made the decision in October.
Yeah.
Did you feel as if you took the company as far as you can go, or you just felt like that now is the time? Because most people hold on too long and they and they lose. Yeah.
There were Yeah. There were 3 reasons I sold. Reason number 1 was all of my wealth was tied up
Mm.
into that one asset, and I now had a wife, I had daughters, I have 3 daughters, and I really just wanted to diversify. So that was one reason. Uh, Reason number 2 was I start generally around July
Okay.
planning out the next year, and I had a great plan for 2020. The only problem was it was the exact same plan as 2019, and I was a little bit bored. I was like, we talk about, you know, creativity and innovation, and I just felt like I wasn't doing anything new, and I really wanted to learn and, like, have new challenges, so that was reason number 2, and then there was just some personal reasons where one of my family members really needed my time at that moment, and I wanted to be there for that person, and so those were the kind of the 3 main
And
reasons why I
you're
did it.
so articulate. Like I hope our audience can see everything you do is well thought out. You don't seem like the type of person that just moves from the hip. I think that sometimes people mix from creativity and still being well polished or well thought. They think that those are the two of the same thing. It is not. Can you explain the difference?
Look, I think everyone is creative. They might not know it, but everyone is creative. Um, and it really just comes down to there are 2 things that come from creativity. The first are ideas, and the second is the risk and the willingness to
Mm.
pursue those ideas. And, I'll give you an example. I spend a really large percentage of our revenue on innovation and technology. Um, so I'm taking my ideas and I'm putting them to life. Um, and I don't have to do that. But I also believe that, it allows me to truly be different from our competition. Like you talked before, like in the opening about, you know, don't focus on the competitor, focus on the creativity. And the only twist I would add to that is focus on being different from your competition, being more creative than your competition. Don't be the same as your competition. And uh, by spending more on innovation, so like this is what I tell everybody. On January 1, the business year starts. And I want your business to be better on December 31 than it is on January 1. And the only way you're going to do that is if you budget for it. If you are not willing to put your money where your mouth is, then your business is going to be exactly the same. But even if you make incremental improvements, like a 1% improvement every 90 days, over 5 years, that compounds to a really large number of
The company doesn't
improvements.
look the same.
And if none of your competition is spending
We're
that
breaking
money
up on the
on innovating and
video.
making
This,
themselves
I don't
better,
know if it's on my
then you
end
just
inadvertent,
you built
but
a
if you
moat.
can hear
You
me,
built it so that you have
I
something
wanted to
really
ask you one
special
more
and
question. I
different
hope
from
you come
everyone
back in.
else.
I think it's mine. I'm 39%. I got so many people at my house today. So my internet connection is good. There you go. You back? You back? There we go. All right. I have one more question for you.
Yep.
And this is, thank you so much for
Yeah.
sharing your wisdom with our audience. And this was a great conversation. And I'm pretty sure people feel a whole lot smarter after our conversation. But when we look at what's going on now with AI, and I'm going to specifically look at the ChatGPT rollout when they rolled out 5, and how people was up in arms because they were so used to 4. And this is my whole thing about the competition. Competition is driving all of these companies to try to roll out, and they're not listening to the audience. And even though these tools and systems may be a bit innovative and creative, you still got to listen to your audience. What did they do wrong? And if you were advising them, what would you have told them to do? Rose in the cave. Oh man, I wanted that answer. Did you hear me?
No, but I think I got the question. Like, are you innovating that's helping your customers, and are you listening to your customers, or are you just innovating for the sake of
Yes,
innovation?
because
Was that kind
when
of
they
like what you
rolled
were
out,
asking?
they didn't take in consideration they just thought the product was going to be better and everybody was going to fall in line. And the customers were like, well, first of all, we don't know what's coming and we don't want this, right?
Yeah. So when it comes to creativity and innovation, the most important thing that you have to think about is what are you building next? And uh, ideally, what you're innovating on is going to help your customers solve their pain point. And so if you are choosing things that add no value to your customers, then it becomes a hobby. You know what I'm saying? Like you're not building something that's special. And so it really talks about listening to your customers and understanding, what their needs are. And so if you go back to my comment before of, I know who my customers are, I'm trying to improve their CPR score, and my innovation now is all around that. Now, it could be that my clients don't care about increasing their cash, their profit margin, or their revenue growth, but I have a feeling that, there's not many companies that would have a problem with any one of those 3. But now I got to think about, what am I building? And, will it
Well,
solve
there
those
you have it,
problems?
everybody. I told you we only sit you at the feet of the best. We sit you at the feet of the masters, persons who have not just talked the talk, but they walk the walk. And we have conversations to help you evolve your life. We don't ask you for cash apps, for Venmos, or any of those things. But what we do ask is that you support our guests. Jon's, all of his information is in the description. Go and follow him on social media. Let him know that you heard his voice here on our platform. And then not just support our guests, but that you hit like, share, and subscribe. Your subscriptions, your likes, your shares help these conversations get to the ears of people that need it. We're not just talking for talk's sake. We want to see people's lives change. And finally, our book is out. Our book, by the time you're hearing this, the book should be up. But if it's not, on walkinvictory.me, Awakening I Am. We have agents. We have all of these things that we're bringing to you, our listening audience. We want you to learn how to prompt. So we're showing the intersection between prompt engineering and subconscious prompting for a better life. The only difference is the subconscious mind may take a little bit longer. It moves really, really rapid. Enjoy the rest of your day. Peace.
Right.